Team Aiden forever.
Yeah. We should have, like, the fact that, like, none of us could, like, find a way to be attracted to Aiden is so dark.
Well, yeah. I was fully attracted to him. I was like, he's amazing. He has a steady job. He's stripping her floors. He's wearing, like, wide leg jeans. Like, I was like, this is so cute. And, like, Carrie just, you know, shat on him. Shat on his heart.
Carrie is toxic.
Yeah, she's trash. Yeah.
You know? Even, like, later, you're just like, you weren't even that good of a friend. We all wanted to be you. I had to attack Carrie later.
Phoebe Robinson, and we're back with another episode of Black Frasians.
You should have been in Hamilton.
Okay, you guys, you know that familiar voice. It's the voice of someone cute. I'm talking about my co-producer, me editor, in the love of my stinking life, British Bloody Bake Off.
Hello.
Hello, babes.
How you doing?
I'm good. It's freaking December.
Oh my God, hasn't this year gone so quickly?
Yes.
Like, I swear, I was one of those people at the beginning of the year that was kind of a little bit excited to go into lockdown, where it's like, okay, I know it sounds a bit weird, but just kind of like, oh, actually, if the whole kind of country's shutting down, we can just like lounge around a bit. And then obviously the severity and like the weeks that went on, it's like, oh shit, actually, this is cray.
Yeah, you were like staycation, and then
yeah,
it's like
exactly. And now it's December, and the world, like the year's over. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's done.
Oh.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Thank you for your apology.
But you know what? I'm a human being.
Facts.
And I gotta say, I'm pretty excited about December because the birth month of my mom and me brother.
Anyone else?
Oh, yeah, and you. Okay, so what was your favorite birthday, babe?
Ever?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
And your 19 years on Earth. Just kidding, he's not 19.
The thing, obviously a lot of my birthdays in my later life, I spent away working.
Mm-hmm.
So
as a tour manager.
Yes. So
Can I say for which band it was?
Sure. So I spent a lot of time away. And a lot of times it was on a show day. So it's like, oh, happy birthday. Okay, we'll actually get back to the job at hand.
Right. It's tough when you're tour managing Bjork. It really is.
I did not tour manage Bjork.
Bone Thugs and Harmony?
No. Well, that would have been a good one, though.
That would have been so fun.
Just a nerdy white guy with that. So I don't even remember too much of my birthdays when I was younger either.
Oh, is it because you don't take your ginkgo biloba to help with your memory?
Yes, that's exactly why.
Okay, so you don't have, there's not one birthday that has stuck out in your mind?
Last year's, I think.
Oh, that's cute.
Where I was tricked into going to Mumbai with Phoebe.
Okay.
She was like, I've planned this trip. You've never been to India. You and I are going to go for like a week, go to Mumbai. We'll have a great time. We'll go exploring, which actually turned out to be you two are finishing their tour in Mumbai. So we're going for your birthday, but actually we're really going to go see them in concert.
Okay, so now you heard a pack of lies. Now here is the truth. The truth is this, Your Honor. I had a very romantic birthday weekend planned for us in Manhattan.
Oh, yeah.
We were going to stay at the Four Seasons Hotel. I was really going to do it up for you. I was going to book this helicopter ride so we could do a little tour of the city.
Oh, they've been in a helicopter.
Me neither. I've never been to heli either. We were going to do massages. We were going to do cute little dinners. And then what happened is, so when I went to Auckland, New Zealand to see you two perform, and they were nice enough to put my picture in a slideshow about like incredible women throughout history. Just that's not important to the story, but I just want that known that my face is on a giant screen in Auckland. Okay, so then we go to the after party and we're having a good time. Me and some squirrel friends. And I was like, oh, this has been so great. And Bono's team was like, you should come to Mumbai. And I was like, no, it's Bake Off's birthday. We have a whole thing planned. They're like, no, they would love to have you there. You should come to Mumbai. And so I was like, oh, that feels like an honor to know that they would love to have me there. So then I FaceTimed you and said, here's the tea. Bono was like, oh my God, I can't do the show without you.
You're fucking trifling. You trifling hoe.
And so I asked you, would it be cool if we like went to Mumbai?
And what? I was going to say no.
But I did change up your birthday.
It was a great trip. We did have a good fun.
We had so much fun. We like stayed out late. The food, I think, was the highlight for me.
The food was amazing.
Incredible.
After the first couple of days of like your body's going, wait, what the fuck are you putting in me?
Oh, yeah, I had diarrhea for 36 hours.
Yeah.
But then after that, everything like stuck.
Yeah.
But I would love to go back because we only stayed there for 4.5 days because then we had Christmas with your family, which was
then we
fun.
flew to the UK. That was a trip, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. We got some miles in on that one.
Yeah, that we couldn't use this year. Okay, so your favorite birthday is then?
Yeah.
Do you feel like part of the reason you blocked out your birthdays is that like people, because this happened with my mom, because my mom's birthday's on the 26th.
Right.
So people would be like, here's your present. It's a Christmas/birthday present.
I'd always get like birthday/Christmases presents.
That's trash.
My mum even this year said that I could get my brother's son a birthday/Christmas present. I was like, no, that's trash.
Yeah.
Come on.
He deserves two.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Can one of my presents be to you that I shave my legs?
Sure. I mean, you haven't done it all year, so.
Hey guys, guess what? We have merch, y'all.
Merch, you say?
Yes, boo.
Where can I get this merch?
PhoebeRobinson.com/merch.
Oh, and what sizes do you have?
T-shirts and sweatshirts run from small to triple XL.
Well, goddamn.
I think that was a great commercial.
Me too.
Yeah. Okay, so go to PhoebeRobinson.com/merch. Get some cute clothes for the winter.
Help support us. Keep the lights on.
Mm-hmm. And then, as you guys know, we are an indie podcast. Okay.
Oh.
Okay, so we like to support Black-owned businesses that like I love and adore. And I've been drinking out of this mug. If you're watching on YouTube, this is a cute little beaker mug that says Melanin on it.
I think you'll need to do what they do on all the makeup YouTube channels. There we go. Oh, maybe not.
Yeah, I don't think that helped.
No, I don't think it did at all. My bad.
No. Did that help? No, that did help. That's so good.
Mm-hmm.
Look at my hands. Look at my love lines. Okay, anyway, I got this mug. Oh my gosh, maybe like, like over 2 years ago. And I love them so much. So I just put like a little basil, like I infused a little drink in there. But it's a really cute mug for coffees and teas.
I get cussed out for using it a lot.
Because he's like, oh, I love this mug. And I'm like, where's your melanin?
It's one of my favorite mugs for coffee.
But it's super cute. It's lightweight. You could wash it, hand wash it, or throw it in your dishwasher.
So it's held up to the dishwasher pretty well.
It's been very, very, very strong. It's, it says 12 ounces here, but you could probably go up to what, 14 ounces if you're feeling randy.
Sure. I mean, I don't think I'd be. If I'm feeling randy, I'm not going to be filling up a mug.
What are you going to be doing when you feel randy?
I don't think it's that kind of podcast.
Maybe it could be. Do you want to share?
No, I just want to move on.
He's gonna be taking his dick out. Okay, so you're so mad at me.
Yeah.
You guys, the Melanin mug, okay, it's so cute. They've been seen, and get this, Essence Magazine, at the Oscars Black Women in Hollywood Luncheon,
Wow.
Trumpet Awards. So you can go to the melaninmug.com. You could go their Instagram. I mean, you guys should really sort of just like get on it, because I know last holiday season they sold out for a bit. So like that's probably going to happen again this year. So Melanin mug, honeys. That is T as in Tom, H as in Harry, E as in Earl, M as in Mary, E as in Eric, L as in Larry Mullen Jr., drummer and founder of U2. A as in Amber, Ruffin, star of the Amber Ruffin Show on Peacock. N as in Nancy Sinatra, a relative of Frank's.
We're waiting.
Okay. I as in Islamabad. N as in
Nancy Drew.
Oh yes, Nancy Drew. Hey queen. Keep your nosy ass at home. Okay. M as in Michael B. Jordan. He and I corresponded on Instagram for half a second. How did you feel about that, babe?
I mean, he obviously felt threatened and knew only to keep it to a couple of comments and then get the hell out of your DMs. So, feel pretty good.
Yeah, I gently dragged him for his People magazine Sexiest Man Live cover because he was not shirtless.
Right.
And so then he commented on the post. And I was like, okay. And then you as in
you've seemed to have lost the plot.
No, you as in U-Turn movie, which starred Sean Penn and Jennifer Lopez.
Great.
And then G.
Oh, there's more?
G is the last letter. G as in
God, can this be over?
that the Melanin mug on Instagram. T as a Tom.
No, we're definitely not doing that. So today's guest is pretty good, eh?
Wow. Yes. Okay. Today's guest, I'm very excited about it because it's the end of the year. I think for a lot of people, it's been a contemplative year.
Yes.
I think for a lot of people, we're all sort of like learning things about ourselves that we want to work on, things that we like, oh, we should like dig into this deeper because this is a great thing about me that I'm learning through all this strife.
Yeah.
And during COVID, I've been like they've been pretty vocal about the fact that I've been reading so many books. And I really love this poet, author, activist. I read both her books. First one, Heart Talk, and Where to Begin. And she now has a journal out called Heart Talk, which is, a 52-week long journal. And I just felt like she's just been so inspiring and wonderful. And I really appreciate her word and her work. And so I wanted to have her on to sort of kick off the last month of, I was gonna say of Bake Off, of Black Frasier for the year. And we talk about, just like self-care, how we can heal ourselves, the journey that she's been on, writing, giving
Mm.
out advice. I think it's a very sort of like wonderful, cozy, lovely conversation. And I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. So without further ado, Bake Off, do you want to tee it up?
Here is Phoebe's conversation with Cleo Wade.
That was cute. This is going to be so fun. When I mentioned that you were doing, I got so many questions and people are really sort of like need the positivity. I mean, I think a lot of us felt it after Biden won, but there's still the pandemic. There's still all the, racism, all the things that are sort of like holding people down. And I love your books. And it was so great to read both of them during quarantine because it really helped me sort of like center myself a little bit and sort of like get myself out of my head a touch, which was nice. So I just think your work is so amazing, so special. So I'm so glad that we can do this episode today.
I'm so grateful to be here. I'm such a fan. And, I think maybe this is my first podcast during quarantine. And so I'm just really excited. And, it's definitely, I do think it definitely has been so strange. The Joe Biden win feels weird because, like it's a symbol, not a problem, like a solution to a problem. It's the solution to like a bad symbol, and the symbols are important. And it's like,
yeah.
It's also been really interesting because I feel that the people who are obsessed with removing Trump as the symbol, or who felt like I just have like all of my relief is wrapped up in that, I'm like, I find that that's like ends up being people who like live the most in like a certain bubble, because like, if it is about the characters and not about the people, that it's not really about the problems. Right.
Yeah.
And so it's been really interesting to just see even people in my own life where I'm like, yeah, just because I just can't have my kids growing up like knowing that that's the president, and I'm like, valid and yes, but I keep waiting for the and to that sentence. Yeah. Also because you're hoping that they, want to also continue the work beyond the symbols, and you're kind of like, yeah, and what else?
Yeah. I know. I think like people just sort of, they think about what immediately sort of directly affects them. And then they're like, if they have time, then they can sort of focus on something else. And I'm just sort of like, this country and the world there are a lot of things that are immediate outside of just our personal lives. So like prayers up, fingers crossed that, we all keep like putting the work that we have been doing and even doing more, I think is also kind of pretty key at this point.
I think we will. I think that there's a culture of the work that's been created, not, and I think that because of that, it will persist. I think that that's the biggest thing. It's like either whether you're a musician or an actor or whatever it is, and you always are hoping that you poke through the culture and you kind of become a part of the culture, and that's how you kind of go, or become the culture. I mean, listen, like we've been listening to Drake songs for like 15 years now, like, but it's because it's a culture. It's not even just it's not a performer. And so I do think that, not to compare this social movement to Drake, but I do think that the culture of caring and active citizenship, I think it is a culture. I don't think that it is, I don't think that you get that many people on the streets consistently over a 4-year period, with it being like a moment and not a movement and a culture. So
yeah. Well, we should pause for a second because I didn't even like do like my introduction for the like we just like dove like right in. Okay. So hi, Cleo. Hi. That's it. Okay, so I'm obsessed and I want to like know like everything about you, like sort of like your origin story of how you became sort of this person that, myself and lots of people, we look towards your writing, towards your wisdom and your words of encouragement to help sort of guide us not only through like tough times in life, but just our lives in general. So like, I would love to hear like how you became who you are today.
Well, I was born in New Orleans, Louisiana, and you know, it's really interesting because I think it's not till my own therapy as an adult where
Mm-hmm.
um, I remember one day I was having a bad day in therapy and I was like, I'm just going through a really hard time. Or I'm going through it, I just had a really hard day. And my therapist goes, "You've had a really hard life." And I
Mm.
remember thinking that I never thought that because when it's always been kind of something, when you've had to learn to cope really early.
Yeah.
And for me, I really had to learn how to console myself really early because I grew up in a divorced household. And from whether it was because of our class, it didn't grow up with a family that had money or and my race, my dad's Black, is like there's not a culture of there's not a culture of tools, whether it's emotional or mental tools that help
Mm-hmm.
us with our problems. There's a culture of numbing avoidance that quote unquote helps us with our problems, but really obviously doesn't. And it actually just allows for us to make our problems or personal pains and struggles and unhealed things something our children inherit. And so
Mm.
for me, when I was growing up, my mom will be the first one to say, she'll be like, Cleo just really raised herself. But it was because, my parents had so much unhealed and hard things in themselves, whether it was their own marriage. My mom is white and I'm pretty sure that my mom's uh, dad didn't even go to their wedding because it
Mm.
was an interracial marriage. And growing up, people always think that New Orleans is just this amazingly, open, tolerant, embracing every stripe of life person because it is for the most part, but it is in the dead center of Louisiana. And every suburb around it is deeply racist. And every person that I went to high school with was deeply racist. And when I was growing up, my grammar school was like kind of more localized to like New Orleans, really, really quirky New Orleans families. So
Mm-hmm.
I think I had this like kind of faux sense of what the world would be because literally, like, I don't think there was a predominant race in the school at all. And it's probably
Mm.
the only time in my life where there wasn't. And it was kind of this hippie school where you would like could do modern dance instead of PE.
Yeah.
And so I think the mix of that and having two parents who my dad's an artist and he took all of these amazing photographs in the 60s and 70s of like Miles Davis and Aretha Franklin and all of these kind of
Wow.
legend and Nina Simone and Red Fox and all of these really legendary kind of Black iconic figures. And he sold them out of our living room throughout my whole childhood. And it was so funny because we always had like these random like tourists. Like I'd come home and I'd be like, "Hi." And my mom is a chef, and so she would cook out of our kitchen. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's really funny because even now I always have to have like a writing room or a thing I do that's in my house. Like I like,
Mm.
but it's because my parents always worked out of the house and did their craft out of the house. My mom would make lunches on our counter and then take them door to door places and sell them. And so, I think that kind of growing up and they're also very free spirited people too. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like, they are like my mom. I remember every day not realizing it till I was older that I was like, oh my gosh, like my mom like went out every Thursday. Like, and then I remember when I was old enough to like sneak into the same bar and I didn't see her there because she'd stopped going by then. But my mom would go to a bar called the Funky Butt Bar every Thursday. And I always wonder, I was like, God, my mom is so tired on Fridays. And I was like, oh my God, my mom is like hungover from partying on Fridays. Because they're like really New Orleans-y. Like New
Yeah.
Orleans really attracts people who, my parents have never wanted really big careers. They've always wanted to
Mm-hmm.
like work enough to be able to be at Mardi Gras and Jazz Fest. And like, as long as we could afford our Jazz Fest tickets, like through the discount we got from my school, then like that was enough. And so because of that, I think that, that and the spirit of New Orleans also raising me, I think I always grew up knowing that joy was deserved no matter who
Mm.
you were or how much you had or how much you didn't have. And I think for me, whenever I did go through hard times, like moving through the intense racism of my surroundings or the, emotional unavailability of my parents,
Mm-hmm.
I think really early on, I understood that I was like, I don't think anyone really can get you through something that feels uncomfortable or sad but yourself. as an adult, I realized that you can count on friends and you can count on therapy and you can count on self-help books and other tools. But I think then I really kind of, I knew that all I had was whatever kind of that inner wisdom that I think all children have, that you can say like, okay, I can find my own kind of happy place. I can sit there and be like, you know what, like this is hard, but I'm sure that da 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 da, and I'm sure that you can get through it like in this kind of way. And there's not all people get to have blah blah blah. And I think that when I was able to do that, I was like, okay, I think it really built this foundation in me that made me, not immediately a poet, self-help writer or anything like that, but it made me the person that was the first person my girlfriends came to if there was a problem, or it made me the person who, had friends that were maybe 10 years older than me or 15 years older than me. Or I remember, I remember sitting at the table with my mom's friends going through a divorce and being 11 and talking through it with them. And I think
Wait,
that,
you were just like chiming in as they were talking about
I was
divorce?
just sitting there and I was like, I remember my friend, I said, my friend, Talia Terranova, wherever she is right now. Well, I know where she is. I think she's in Utah or something, but her mom, Natalie, Miss Nat, who is I loved her. And she will tell you that she went through a breakup and I was there for her like a girlfriend, and I was like 11 or 12. And I was, and granted, I was probably imitating Friends characters or Girlfriends characters or Living Single characters or Sex and the City characters. And I feel actually grateful. Don't you? Sometimes you think about how cool it is that our generation grew up on so much programming around female friendship.
Yeah.
It's like, it's really fascinating because when I think about that, like, my mom didn't. And I always think, I was like, gosh, how different would your life have been if like everything was about, what you make of yourself, and then that kind of family that you can like build to support the things you want to do, and the finding the healthiest relationship possible, even though Big was mad toxic, that we all know. But
Team Aiden forever.
Yeah. We should have like, the fact that like none of us could like find a way to be attracted to Aiden is so dark.
Well, I was fully attracted to him. I was like, he's amazing. He has a steady job. He's stripping her floors. He's wearing like wide leg jeans. Like, I was like, this is so cute. And like Carrie just, shat on him. Shat on his heart.
Carrie is toxic.
Yeah, she's trash. Yeah.
Even like later, you're just gonna like, you weren't even that good of a friend. We all wanted to be you. I had to unpack Carrie later.
So like your parents you were saying you describe them as like free spirits and really just sort of, they're so artistic and creative. And so I'm curious as to like looking back on who you are now, like what do you think are some of like the greatest gifts they gave you that shaped the person that you've become?
I think the greatest gift, my parents have such eccentric personalities. And I think that they taught me and because they had that and weren't changing that for their children or anyone, I think I learned really early on to like, just let people be themselves. And in that later, that evolved to allow people to go through what they go through without judging it. And I think that when you can be a witness for someone rather than a judge, it provides such a loving, healing space for them. And so I think that, definitely having these kind of really, my dad is like one of the most eccentric people you'll ever meet. And my mom is like, we have to like pull her down from trying to dance on the kitchen counter table in her 50s and 60s. And so it's, I think that having those parents where you're like, there was no option to be like, oh my God, Mom, like just be quiet and get in the car. And she's like, I'm not getting in the car and being quiet. Like the band's on, like that's not, there was no controlling them in that kind of, I'm embarrassed as a teenager way. And so I think that allowed me, while it was hard for me as a kid, but I think that later I was like, that was a really divine lesson, because everyone deserves to just be who the hell they are. Yeah. And, while we want to be as considerate of others as possible, and no one should be centered by being who they are, we should still allow for people to be who they are and find ways to have community in that. And we shouldn't be looking for ways to have community by saying that like, you can't be at all who you are if you want to be in community with me, because that's not giving flexibility of spirit on your end. And so I think that, and I think also because of that, I wasn't creative alternative paths. I moved to New York when I was 17, and I,
Same.
I didn't think.
Yeah.
I went to I had an internship, and I did something that none of my girlfriends were doing at the time, and I was definitely scared, but I also thought, like my like I've seen nothing but examples in my life of going against the grain or not doing what everyone else was doing. And while I didn't know, even in that moment, I knew that I always secretly wanted to write, but it was a secret I kept for myself as well. So I don't think that it was tormenting me when I was, 17, 18, 19 in New York. But I mean, I went to poetry summer camp when I was really small. And so I think that I always knew that that was a way like to express myself and myself and my stories and what I was feeling. But, also like, especially then you're also like, whether or not you go to college, you still do want to have those kind of college years where you're like, for me, I just wanted to find a job and make money and really experience things because, I never thought I'd get to New York, and I never thought I'd get to France the first time I went to France, or Japan, the first time I went to Japan. And so a lot of it too was, those kind of foundational years of really investing myself in living and experiencing what was available, whatever I could get my hands on, and whether that was personality types or bad boyfriends or whatever it might have been. But I think that my parents being, my dad being such an artist and my mom being such a kind of, my mom is really like, she's like, I don't get it, but in a non-judgmental way, So she's just like, that's crazy. Like, I cook and I sell the lunches and I like go to Mardi Gras. Like my mom's in a disco dance troupe called the Disco Amigos, which is probably like, honestly, the whole thing's probably really problematic. But it's definitely problematic actually. But
you're like realizing that like right now you're like, should I text her, let her know?
I'll try to text her know, but like people in New Orleans just like live on their own whole other planet. It's like, you just are like, okay, y'all do y'all, like, but yeah, so I think that knowing that there wasn't judgment or a lot of fear being instilled in my path. I mean, I had the fear in the sense of like, there was no safety net in my family. Like, I'm the safety net for every member of my family, and I have been since I got a job when I was 18. I mean, I started working, in retail shops in New Orleans when I was 12, but like, so I've always been I've given my babysitting money to my parents or like, so I've always been kind of someone who chipped into my family and now is like the safety net for my family. But
do you feel any sort of pressure with being the safety net for your family? Or are you sort of kind of like, okay, I'm going to step into this moment and rock with it? Or are you sort of like, oh gosh, I don't know how I'm going to get through this?
I think first, if I'm being totally honest, you work through the resentment, right? Because you're like, you hope that like as parent, your parents, or you see it in so many examples where parents like, are the, stepping stool that help support you to your next thing. Not the thing where you're like, I mean, I think I probably would have, maybe I guess it's kind of a could have, would have, should have thing, but I wonder sometimes if I probably would have, tried to kind of step out on my own to write earlier. If I hadn't had to always calculate, well, what if this bottom drops out here? And, like I really had to make sure that I was as financially stable as possible throughout my entire journey. And so I think first you're kind of like, gosh, I wish that like I was the thing my parents worried about instead of my parents worrying about me. Or you see all your other friends where you're like, that you see them being able to take these really cool risks really like a lot earlier than you, because at the end of the day, if they had to go move into their parents' house or, whatever it may be that however they support them, they could, or if their parents need to pay their rent or whatever. And so I think once you work through that, then you're kind of, and you like, just like realize that that's just not your destiny and that's not your story. And you're kind of like, oh, okay, like that's not my reality. And one of my biggest kind of mental tricks, I guess, is like, I do not spend time in any other reality but my actual one. So like, even one of the things I kept saying to people during this pandemic is that I was like, stop thinking about life before or life after. I was like, if you are just here now and out of this state of comparison with like something that just does not even exist on one spectrum or the other, you know, like what your life was like this time last year just does not exist. It's not a real place. And even however you're remembering it is some like hyped up, like majestic version of it. Just get out of there. You know, if you are here and saying, okay, what is there to do today? You know, where can I grow today? Where can I lend myself today to myself, the people around me? Where can I find a way to give myself things I haven't, you know, maybe had the time or space to before? What are my challenges that I have to look at today? But I think if you're always looking at it in comparison to like, whether it's like, I can't believe this time last year I had this job and like now I have this job and I have to do this and I feel this way. And it's like, okay, we should just assess exactly where we are right now. And it just does help, you know, and I think that, you know, not arguing with like non-realities is one of the most helpful things you can do with your entire life. And so I think that for me, and there's a certain sense of just kind of surrender and peace to that, you know? So for me, I think that whether it was with my being the safety net of my family or, you know, being the one that's everyone's first call or whatever, I think that it's more like, okay, you know, that is what it is. And every time I'm somewhere else comparing it to like a fake, non-real thing, it's annoying. But if I'm just in it and assessing what's happening today, I actually feel really peaceful and calm about it. And I'm grateful that even if I couldn't have something, someone in my family could. Even if I didn't have that person I could call like that or could feel that way about. I'm really grateful that I can be that to my parents.
Yeah. And that was a lovely answer, by the way. And you brought up so many things I want to touch on. So I think one of the things that a lot of people listening to this might be struggling with in terms of this pandemic is like what you were saying about like comparing what your life was before the COVID to now. And I find myself doing that too, where it's like, well, last year I was doing this, or I had all these plans for this. And I think it's maybe perhaps one of the reasons why myself and other people struggles, because it's sort of like, I guess, surrendering to like what the reality is means you have to be honest with yourself that you can't actually control your life. And that's a scary sort of realization to get to. And so I guess my question is like, how can people like myself sort of let go, accept that we cannot control a lot of what goes on in our lives, and not be sort of paralyzed or be frustrated or get depressed by it, because that's a really hard, evolved, sort of elevated thing to do. I feel like.
Yeah. So before this pandemic, you thought you could control everything?
I didn't think I could control everything. My boyfriend is smiling, but he's like, that bitch did. No, but I'm very type A, and I have like my to-do lists and my plans, and I like to map out everything and sort of feel like, okay, I'm going to do this, and that's going to really lead to this result. And so I think there are a lot of people who are listening to this who are also like that. And so then when the pandemic happened, I was just sort of like, what the hell is going on? This is like the most out of control I feel like I've been in my entire life, So
you can still be type A during the pandemic.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of people think that the pandemic is something that had to completely flip their entire way of being in their head. All those ways that you want to make your to-do list can exist in the pandemic. But I think that we have to understand that, like, whether you're type, you don't have to not be type A anymore. And not that you could, probably, And so I say that as a fellow type A person. And so I think that, it's more about saying to yourself, where do I want to apply who I am and how I approach life? Where do I want to apply that at a moment in time where, there's certain things that couldn't possibly be on this to-do list, but there's a zillion trillion things that could, whether it's like, the new things on my to-do list are like getting to know myself, You know, maybe the thing on your to-do list is to say like, you know, if I have this added time to myself, um, you know, what is like, what am I really into? And like when everything is stripped of the world and I can't go from one distraction to the next, to the next, to the next. And I am not the things I do. And I think that those are a lot of the like harsh realities we moved through, which was like, do I like these people or did we just do stuff together? Do I like these things or were they just like jammed on my schedule? So like I constantly did them anyway, you know? And so I do think that during this time is such a critical time to say like, wow, you know, who do I really like spending my time with? What rituals really prop up like the best of my mental and emotional space? I think that this has never been a better time to apply your type A to do. You know, and by the way, even if you're looking to control stuff, there's all kinds of stuff around your house you can control, you know? And so I do think that you know, it's not about having to change who you are and how you approach life if that works for you, but it's doing it in flow with the universe, right? It's doing it in flow with like the bigger picture. And there's the small things that you can move around. And then there's the big things that you do have to accept that I can be myself, but I'm kind of part of a big wave. You know, and I can kind of, you know what's kind of my little corner of this, but I do think that we do start to flirt a little bit with like the ego thing of like, I think because, you know, there's a difference between you know, like to have my to-do list and get things done. And then I like to, you know, understand like, you know, what fruits I yield from my work or what I do, or how I like when I invest attention or time or energy or money in this way, like what that return looks like. You know, there's a difference between that and the world should work the way I would like it to work and is convenient for me and makes me feel anxiety free at all times. Like I would say that kind of flirts with the ego, right? Like I think that is kind of like the world should just be the way you want it to be. Like who says that? You know, you can say like your house can be the way you want it to be, like the books might be a certain way, but like the world should be exactly the way that makes you feel comfortable in this exact moment. Like that feels like a stretch because like even like when you think about how small we are in like the giant universe of all the planets and like how small even Earth is, you're like, hold on. So I'm actually like the way that this Earth revolves is supposed to do with like what I'm comfortable with. You know, that's where we're a little bit like, okay, let me reel that thinking in. And so I do think that during this time, it's more like it's such an amazing time to personally investigate. It's such an amazing time to be proud of, understand, and have a deep relationship with resiliency. You know, I know that there's a lot of people who may have had one type of job last year and have a job that they don't want now, whether, you know, it's Postmates or, you know, Uber Eats or whatever it may be. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's kind of one of those things where, you know, it's looking into yourself and being like, I can handle this. And like, I can handle things that aren't my ideal. And I think that to find strength and your own kind of power in coping, moving through, finding joy despite, is one of the things that I think when this era has, you know, we have moved through this era, which we will, we're all going to be so much better off knowing.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I mean, this is a perfect segue into talking about your two books, Heart Talk and Where to Begin. And you now also have this journal out for Heart Talk, which is supposed to be a 52-week sort of journey where every week you're working on yourself and journaling and writing. And so I want to know, like, what made you go from like having these realizations with yourself and sort of kind of like evolving as a person to being like, I'm going to put this down because I think these words will help others the way that they helped me.
You know, it's really funny because I was the last person of all of my friends to get on Instagram. And I just remember thinking like, I'd been doing some writing and I'd been, you know, always sharing it with just my close circle of friends. And then I started sharing it like more outwardly. Like I think I started doing a couple, maybe 1 or 2 readings, but only maybe 1 or 2. I had like hand sewn a little book that I sold to like 100 friends one day. And I kept it really small. And then I realized one day I was like, I do just think that maybe this could help other people. And it still took me, even in live time, I had to like become more comfortable with my own voice. So like I remember that like when I first started putting things online, some of it sounded like really lighthearted. I was like, yo, like da 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 da, and it was like this kind of character around it because I was just really insecure about, say, like, kind of like, should I be giving advice to people? And then I realized that my biggest revelation personally was like, I asked myself one day, what was the thing I thought I was the best at in the whole world? And it was being a friend to other people. And I was like, I am a really good friend. I was like, I think that especially if like you're going through a hard time or if you, like it, like if that friend who sits at the kitchen table with you or on the couch with you, like I am that, but that is where I think I shine in life. And so I was like, well, how can I be that to everyone I meet, and how can I, and even in having that revelation, it just changed the way I treated everyone, whether that was, I was always a person who was like nice to the taxi driver or, the doorman in New York or wherever, I wasn't like a psycho, but I was more, I realized that I didn't know the state of anyone's life or how anyone's day was going. And I definitely opened myself up to it. And I think also because I'd gone through my own spiritual journey by that point of like really reading and looking into, self-help books and spirituality and, being on my own kind of super soul journey in that way, it's like, I actually had the capacity for the first time in my life. So I was kind of earlier in my early 20s, like, I think you'd meet people that be like, she was cold or like, she didn't really look at me, but it was actually because like, I didn't have it, like I actually didn't know how to survive in environments by being like the warmest person in the room. I learned how to survive, or mentors I had were like, no, listen, like you stick to your own. And like, it's not about being liked, it's about being like, whether it's intimidating or like respect means that like you're unapproachable, not like warm and approachable, which is also like, even though a lot of my early mentors in the business world were women, they were really women who were like trying to out patriarchy the patriarchy, and so it was really that. And then I remember like kind of, being like, this just doesn't feel good. Like, this does not feel right. And I realized that I was like, I don't have the, that like love for myself has yet to be cultivated. So like, I had no idea how to give that to another person. And, and even before, being in work environments in New York, I think I'd felt that in high school, like I was the only Black girl in every room. So, you were not, vulnerability was not something you were trying to like offer up or have on your sleeve in Louisiana as the only Black girl in the space, and so I think that after a journey of cultivating those things and then asking myself, do you have that kind of vulnerability and like love within you? Yes. Are you so good at giving it to your friends? Yes. Could you offer it to others? Yes. And so I did. And then that kind of then, I wouldn't say that the idea, I started working on Heart Talk before I think I got on Instagram, but I remembered saying to people, I really just want to write a book because I felt that there wasn't, this realm of like, when I was first writing poetry, it was maybe even before Rupi, who's like one of my really close girlfriends. And maybe it was just her. Maybe it was just the two of us. And we weren't friends then. And we're very close now, but we just didn't know each other then. But, there were no examples of like being able to make it in poetry or like, in 2014, like that was not a career that anyone said you could have at all. But the other thing that I noticed was there were not self-help books for what I felt was like the exact kind of spiritual place where most people were, which was that like, it has become really hard. And it's not just a millennial thing. It's not an, young person thing. It had become hard for everyone I knew to read a book front to back. True. And one that was more kind of rooted in giving to the self. Whether that's because we had self-worth issues that were like, oh, I've got a million other things I should do and not read this book that like somehow like feeds into or like helps me love me. And so I remember one day I was at a dinner and I said, I asked like a group of, it was like a big mix of people, maybe like 15 people. And I was like, how many of you, when you were reading a book, like don't you have your phone with you at all? And like, no one raised their hand. And I was like, how many of you, as you are reading the book, like if you think of your friend, you take a photo of it and disrupt your reading to send them that as you go. And everyone raised their hand. And I realized that I was like, the really light kind of easy reading self-help books do exist. Like Four Agreements is something that, it is not stressful to read. The most amazing books on vulnerability by Brené Brown, which are, not harder to read necessarily, but they're more of a commitment. Yeah. Those exist. And The Power of Now exists, and all of these books Oprah told us about exist. So, but what I didn't feel was that the book that was like, you could pick it up at any page. It's completely non-committal and it's always here for you. It's like that friend that's not annoying. Like they're never going to come to you and be like, why didn't you call? Because that's what it feels like when you have like, 3/4 of your book left and you haven't picked it up in like 2 weeks. And they're just sitting there being like, oh, now she's calling me, like feel that. And so I wanted to create a kind of reading experience that was like, you know what, like wherever you're at is okay. If you want to read this front to back today, you can. If you want to pick it up whenever you want, you can. There's a slight theme that goes through it in the sense of like, it doesn't feel completely random, the book.
Yeah.
So depending on what you are going through it, there's a certain flow if you are reading it front to back, but like, I don't care. Like you could just only read the last page of the whole book and like, that's enough, because if that's all you needed, that's okay. And so for me, it was really important to just kind of create this genre that was like, yes, there'll be like a poem in it. And then there'll be this kind of handwritten note in it. And then there'll be this kind of blurb about your like emotional state in it. And whatever your style of like how you need to get the tool is available in some way in the book.
Yeah, and I also like on Where to Begin, where you have pages where you can just sort of color for a little bit, which is just so relaxed. And I used to like draw and color a lot in like middle school and high school, and then I just completely stopped. And so it's nice to sort of just kind of like revisit that, sort of just doing this activity that's just you and the page. And like you said, like I wasn't picking up my phone to be like, hey, let me take a picture. Like I was just like fully invested in my book and what I'm doing. And so I'm wondering if that was sort of like the intention behind having those breaks where you could sort of like just be at one and just color and be peaceful.
Yeah, I found that I'd been doing a lot more. I don't do coloring meditation as much as I do watercolor as a meditation, but I'd found that so many of my friends had started doing that or were into that. And so for me, when I was doing Where to Begin, I was like, because Where to Begin is such a kind of a capsule book. It's not quite like Hard Talk. Hard Talk took me a few years to write, and it's, a much broader book. Whereas like Where to Begin was really, it's like a centrally focused kind of like idea of, it was like the place where I wanted to put my TED Talk. And it's actually, the entire book is supposed to feel like a meditation. So it's like, like there's one poem that's just like spread out to be like 90 pages, but there's like 10 words on each page. So that the book feels like light and easy and you can flip through it. And like also the amount of people who will write me being like, I finished this book in one day, and there's such pride in that, because sometimes also you need that bridge book that even gets you back into reading.
Yeah.
Where you're like, oh my God, I read a book an entire day. Like now I think I'll read da-da-da. And so I think that when I was thinking about like kind of, when I was making the artwork for that book, I was like, you know what, I'm not going to fill this in. I was like, I'm going to like change up the paper and like make it something so that people can color in it. And it's also been cool because I've gotten to see so many people's artwork from that book, and it's so, so pretty.
Yeah. And so I want to talk about Heart Talk Journal, because I'm not a big journaler. And I've tried a few times, like when I was younger, and I was just like, oh, I'm so boring. And so then I would just stop writing. So I'm wondering, like, what do you think is the importance of journaling and like how that can help someone develop themselves?
you know, whether you see it as a journal or not, and whether you use my journal or not, I think especially when times are hard for
Yeah.
you, whether that's because of pandemic or because of
Mhm.
all of the other things we're also going through on top of the pandemic, which is something I've been thinking about a lot lately, where you're like, I was thinking like earlier, I was like, at some point we're just gonna have to be talking about like everything else. Like,
Yeah.
whether it's like, yes, it's like we are still allowed to talk about like the how hard it is to co-parent or
Mhm.
how hard it is to be a parent or how, like our families being closer or, like
Mhm.
it's like there's still all the things we're gonna have to, or like friendship breakups and all these things. So I was just thinking about that. But I think that when you're going through a hard time, it's really, really, really valuable to just move all of the stories and ideas and feelings you're having out of your body and put them on a
Mm.
page. Whether you think you're a writer or not, whether you want to be a writer or not, whether you're
Mm.
interested in writing or not, it doesn't matter because every thought is constantly trying to bribe another. Everyone feels like it gets tangled with the other one. Everyone feels, like they were just weighing really heavy on you. And if it's something where you just can't stop thinking about it at night, I think that it's time to take it out of the loop and put it somewhere else. And really write with that intention of like, this is weighing me down. Whatever I'm going through has gone from being something I'm analyzing to something that I'm burdened by.
Mm.
And I'm now confused by, and I actually, the more I think about it, the more I feel worse, or the worse I feel. And so I think that, to me, I think that journaling is really helpful for that. But call it journaling, don't call it journaling, call it venting to yourself. I don't,
Yeah.
it's really just about getting it out of your body because so much of what gets trapped in our body becomes other things, right? Whether it's tension
Mhm.
in your shoulders, whether it's, an appendix bursting, whether whatever it could be. I think a lot of, we all know if you have any type of relationship with, yoga or type of any body work, or even if you've ever
Mhm.
gotten a massage and they're like, whoa, what's going on here?
Mhm.
We know that all those stories are trapped in us and turn into stressors. And so, um, when I made this journal, I kind of wanted to make it with as, much freedom for the person as possible. Because if you aren't a journaler, like, I still wanted it to feel like there was space for you. So, there's kind of this mix of like, every week has kind of a blurb that would be similar to something you'd see in Heart Talk. And it
Mhm.
has a mantra at the top. And so for some people, it's like, even if you just want to work with the mantra all week, sometimes like there's just a mantra and it's about shame, right? And if that week was about writing
Mhm.
about shame, there might be a mantra for the week just to kind of always ground you back to, I work with mantras a lot because I find that when I do get hijacked by my random like annoying thoughts, or worse, negative or harmful thoughts, I find that if I do have a mantra to ground myself, I always feel better. Right. So if I'm
Mhm.
sitting here struggling with like shame of like, oh, I can't believe how embarrassing I used to be, or like,
Yeah.
oh, I can't believe I preach these things now, but there's so much I didn't know 10 years ago. And, we feel that everyone feels that way. I mean, Malcolm X talked about that, where he'd say, don't judge anyone where they are because there was a time where you didn't know what you know. And,
Mhm.
for a week like that, there might be a mantra that says, if you are grateful for where you are, you have to respect the road that got you there. And so
Mm.
I do think that having these ideas to kind of constantly get drawn back to is really, really helpful. And then there'll be kind of prompts throughout the week
Mhm.
if you feel kind of like, what do I do with this blank page? Which I do think a lot of people feel too.
Yeah. So before we move to audience questions, I have one last question. Because I just love your writing. I love just the process you've been on with yourself and also with helping us get on our own different journeys. And so I'm curious, throughout your writing, what have you learned about yourself and what have you healed within yourself through your writing?
Um, I think that I have learned that there is no there.
Mm.
There is no, when I get here, I'll feel happy because of this. When I have this, I'll have balance here. I think I've really learned that balance is like a total illusion. I think that,
Mhm.
as soon as you start balancing this, you just meet a whole new set of circumstances that you then have to balance. And so if balance is always the goal, then you're always chasing the goal and never enjoying the moment. And so now I'm just kind of like, oh no, every day has to look different. You know, your activism looks different one day, your motherhood looks different one day, the writing looks different one day. And I think that knowing that there's no like magical place you get to where like the kids are cool and the parents are okay and the writing is like the book is in the works, and it just doesn't it doesn't happen. And so it's not about, it's not, there's certain finish lines that are so great to get to, but as far as the ones of like all of your life making sense in your career and like those bigger ones we think we have in our head, I'm not sure that they exist. And then I think that for healing, I think that what I've, what is the question? When I've most healed? What was it?
Mm-hmm.
I think that I've really, some of the most profound healing I've ever felt was really healing all of the, doubt or the doubters that live within you. Cause sometimes I think they're kind of like a mean gang. That or like whatever your peanut gallery is inside of you, that tell you don't deserve healing.
Yeah.
And so I think that I've been open to such profound healing in my life, not in the sense of, oh my gosh, I healed this thing, but I was like, oh, I healed the thing that told me I didn't deserve healing. And so now I think healing comes in small ways to me all the time, in big ways to me all the time. I think that knowing that I'm worthy of any type of healing in general, because I think a lot of the times we just think that this is what the cards we got dealt, and this is what we deserve. And, this is like as confident as we'll ever be, which is like, and if it feels a little more confident than, most people, you're like, what do you have to complain about or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
But I think that knowing that, there's, we deserve to like continuously evolve, and that the healing is available to us no matter who we are. That's been profound.
Dang, oh my God, this episode, people are going to freaking be taking notes, journaling. Like there's so many pearls of wisdom. This is great. And we have a bunch of amazing audience questions. So let me see. Oh, you know what? I really like this one because I feel like a few years ago, this is sort of something that I was really trying to figure out. Okay, so this question is from Maya. And she writes, how do I embrace being single? Like, how can I practice a nurturing relationship with myself?
There's two folds to that. One, if it's hard for you, to do that, because I do think that there's moments in time where we don't feel, it's hard for us to imagine giving ourselves the time to cultivate a good relationship with ourselves, because it's like, we're just not there yet. Like the self-love isn't there yet.
Yeah.
So if the self-love is not there yet, and you need something that's kind of like faking it till you make it, you can always kind of have that like one kind of like lower energy thought that's like, the better, the happier and better I am single, like the more I'm in the vibe that attracts the thing I want. And like, I try not to I don't think that's the highest possible vibration for self-love and self-care. But I think if you need that to get there, then you should. And by the way, there's a whole book industry that's all about that, right? Which is like working on yourself to attract the one you want. And that's fine. So if you're not there where you can't, if you're very far from I just fucking deserve to love myself in such an incredible way. We're not all there. I've been not there as well, So I think that if you're not there, you can kind of start with listen, whatever I want to find out there, I've got to cultivate in here. I think I wrote about it in Heart Talk. It's you want love, be love. You want light, be light. What does your love and light look like within you? Because we do attract where we are currently. I think that on the flip side, if you are in the place where you're no, I just got out of that relationship because all I want to do is invest in loving who I am. That I think that, starting by taking an inventory, like just being like, gosh, like, what does my perfect day look like? What is my what feels good? Like, what are the things that feel good in my life? Like, and also it's like, I put this in the first page of the journal, which is like, how are you doing? Like, how are you? Like, how are you feeling about your friends and family? How are you like, you need to put it all on the map so that then you can decide like where you are going. Like, oh gosh, like, all right, I'm putting it all out here. So like, I think I need to go this direction to invest here because this is where it doesn't feel like as sturdy. And, finding who you are single is so magical. I remember when I went through a breakup a couple of years ago and I was like, gosh, you just feel so depleted by this relationship. And my friend of mine said, she was like, Cleo, you just need to find your happiest single self and then be that in a relationship. And that was the best advice I ever got, because even when I met my now baby daddy, I really was like the happiest I'd ever been single. And then when I got in the relationship, I was so committed to like that happy single girl that she still gets to like be in my life. Because it's really hard once you are in relationships to like maintain the self-care and the self-love and all of that. And so, I just always think that like, it's such an incredible time when you get to have singlehood is just such an incredible time to like find that person, claim that person, and hold that person tight because you want to be with her your whole life.
Yeah. And I will also say, I know for me, like when I was single before British Bake Off came into my life, there was a really long period where I was just sort of like, oh, being single is like the biggest tragedy. And like, I wish I had someone on a Friday night and I could cuddle and blah, blah, blah. And then I was like, I just noticed like how much I was talking to my friends about being single and just complaining all the time. And so what I started doing is whenever I would feel myself doing that, I would catch myself and I would stop myself and I'd be like, what is something else that I could talk about? Or what is something else I could do with my time instead of sort of feeling like singledom is like this punishment that I'm living, and sort of,
And not a gift.
yeah, and realizing like, oh, I have like this free time now to sort of like, if I want to travel, if I want to like, connect better with my friends, if I want to, do some sort of physical activity like yoga, like, or read a book. And so I really sort of got to see that like, it's not a punishment. It's not like because I'm a bad person. And it's really just sort of like, that's where you need to be right now. And like, you just need to be single and learn some lessons. And then, hopefully you carry those into your next relationship. But I think, for me, and I think for a lot of people, especially maybe women, I think society makes like having the relationship that capital R, like the big, like your grand achievement, right? So if you don't have that, you feel like, am I failing? Am I not doing something right? And then just sort of taking a step back and being like, there are many different ways your life can look, and it does not have to look like the way that we've been told it's supposed to look like.
Oh, 100%. And it's like when you're single, especially if you live alone, it's like the most uncompromising you'll ever have to be. And so it's also like enjoy like freaking like starfishing on your bed and like watching exactly what you want to watch every time you want to watch it. And like everything you're watching at nighttime isn't a compromise, or like, and I'll tell Simon all the time, I'll be like, I actually like need to go like hang with my single self and like watch Gilmore Girls alone in the movie room. And, and he kind of like gets it because, it is, I do, love my family so much. And, being single was also one of the best times of my life because I really made it the best time. And I think that another thing a girlfriend said to me once is like, she's like, never affirm like anything negative you don't want living in you. So like if every time you talk about being single, like you're being negative about it, like you're actually affirming, like you're planting a seed deeper and deeper, like you're rooting that like singlehood sucks. Instead is like, pulling all that up and like only affirming what's positive, which is that like, you know what, like one day you have a kid and like your day is just not your own ever again. If you choose to have kids. And so it's like, actually like, I'm going to enjoy these years where it gets to be all about me. And I remember even the last time I was single, I was like, my entire like life is revolving around my personal happiness. I was like, because I just want 1 year where like where I just was selfishly like obsessed with myself, and not in like a, dark way of like, nope, I'm only eating at this restaurant. So if you don't want to eat there, I'm not going. But in a way where I was like, if I want to travel or do like this, I'm going to go to the place I want, and I'm going to stay in the place I want. And I learned how to spend money on myself for the first time, because I'd always thought about doing for others all the time.
Yeah.
And so if you can really turn your single years into like just nothing but like investment of like love and time and energy and money and all these things into like your freaking joy, like that, you will never, ever regret that.
Ooh, Maya, you will never regret it, honey. Okay.
Never.
Okay. Oh, this is actually really good. This is sort of related to pandemic stuff we were talking about earlier. So this is from Jenny, who writes, I just lost my job and I'm spiraling out about getting a new job in a pandemic. How do I focus? Whew. That's a tough one. That's really tough.
Well, first things first, remember that, you always have a breath, right? So you can always take a deep breath, and remember also, I think that getting through something really hard, we don't know what that looks like. So it can look like it's going to be 10 different things. And again, I think it's about being present and being like, okay, like what do I need to be in this reality right now? And where can I let go? So it's like, don't compare whatever job you're going to have to get to your old job, or where you thought you would be in your work life in 5 years or 2 years or 10 years. And by the way, like these ideas of these like parallel careers where you didn't have periods where you hated your job. I mean, I'm sure you had too. I mean, I had periods where I hated my day job and I was still writing Heart Talk and called myself a writer everywhere I went, and had only jobs that were paying my rent and had nothing to do with writing. So I think that, in this, it's take a breath, know that, no job has to last forever if you don't want it to. There's no right or wrong job during a pandemic. There's only the job that, helps you in this moment to just keep you as safe and stable as possible. What makes you safe and stable is also something we can rethink, right? So it's like, I used to always think I needed this, this, and this, and this. And maybe it's not. And maybe it's like, maybe you get a roommate, or maybe you find alternative ways to kind of restructure your life and say that like, and I think that in finding like kind of joy and community in that, where it's like, I never thought that my life would look like this, but it is for this year. And I'm going to choose to not make this the worst year of my life. And I think that making that decision and then sticking to it helps us to not like constantly spiral. But I think that just having like a moment where we're like, okay, wait, I'm going to be positive right now. And it's like, no, not right now. How about it's like, whether I have the spells of feeling positive or negative, I have decided that this is not going to be the worst thing that's ever happened to me. And because I'm sticking to that decision every day, I'm going to approach whatever problems or circumstances that come with this idea that like, I can do this. Like I can move through this. I can handle this. And when I need support handling this, I'm not afraid to get it.
Yeah. And because I think the last time I lost like a job was during the recession, when I was laid off. Like this indie film company I was working at got shut down, and I could not find like a day job for like 9 months. And, I was like living in New York. I mean, it was in my 20s, so it was a little bit different, where you're sort of like, okay, you can kind of like, you don't necessarily kind of process like how dire things are, because you're just, bopping around. But I do remember that I had to constantly tell myself that like this wasn't going to last forever, because I think it's very easy to sort of spiral into like, I lost my job and I'm never going to get another job again. I'm going to lose my apartment. I'm going to have to move back home to Cleveland, Ohio, live in my parents' basement. And you take it all the way to like your life is over and done. And so what I did to help me focus is that every morning I would wake up and I would just apply to 5 to 7 jobs. and got that out the way. So I could at least feel like, okay, even if I don't have like anyone like hitting me up yet, like it feels like I did something towards that goal of eventually getting a job. And then I don't know what your profession is, Jenny, but like I kind of just had to sort of open. I think beforehand I was like, oh, I'm only going to work in film and TV, like in the admin space. And then when the recession happened, I was sort of like, okay, I think I kind of have to like open up where I'm going to end up like looking for jobs. And that really helped me. And like sometimes it's not great because you might feel like in the moment, oh, this is taking me off my path by taking this job that isn't directly related to like what I was doing before. But sometimes you just need that job that's going to help you get back on your feet. And then that's like the bridge to get you back to where you want to go. So I would say just be open to that could help. Yeah.
And another thing my friend Aminatu wrote a lot about in her book, Big Friendship, is, when she was looking for a job and she couldn't find one, she really like put it out there. She was like, put it out to her entire network. That was like, it doesn't have to be what I've always been doing, but I am looking for a job. And like, not holding, shame and or allowing for like shame and like where you're at or like what happened with your job in blocking like the immediate people in your life to helping you. So like even writing that mass email that's like, hi everyone, like if anybody knows who's looking for basically anything, like these are all my skill sets, here's my resume, like the pandemic's hard, I lost my job, and like allowing people to support you in that too. And I do think that yes, send out your resume and apply to as many jobs as possible and have like a ritual around. I really like your ritual around like starting the day with applying for the jobs and just making sure that it was kind of checked off your list and or doing your follow-up in the mornings. And also I think just being like, anytime I ever wanted something or like really felt like I needed something, like I remember thinking like I would just bring it up all the time because it helped me to have people like remember that it was important to my community. So I'd be like, I'm just really looking forward to getting a new job, or like I remember thinking like I would tell everyone I like was like finishing Heart Talk way before it was done so that they'd always be like thinking like, hey, is it done yet?
Yeah.
And so I think that being, opening it up and kind of just keeping it on the forefront energetically is also something that helps.
Yeah. Okay, so good luck, Jenny. I really hope you find that job soon.
Me too.
Okay, I'll ask you one more question. Oh, this person wants to know about your writing process. This will be great. Okay, so this is from Valerie in West Virginia. And she writes, how does your pandemic life meet with productivity? Like, what is your writing process? Do you do retreats, have a daily routine? So much chaos is making me want to hide.
One of the things I've just been the most committed to is not committing to like any one standard. I just, I think especially even right before the election, just because it was such an intense energy of like this or that or this or that, and all of the things that we had to do to hopefully get this certain outcome, and then just the circus of it all also. And I think that, it's hard because every day felt different. And so I think that like when the world has not like that it has a norm because there's always something crazy happening. But I kind of I've approached writing during this time of like, if I'm not feeling it, I'm not going to do it. I don't allow myself to get completely off into like the zero productivity train, just because I do find that like, having like the kind of dedication to what's important to you show up in some way, whether that's, the most writing I could do in a day is like an email to someone back or, or kind of organizing my thoughts on something. And, so what I kind of think about is that what if by the end of the day in the writing space, whether it's like ideas I'm thinking of or actual work of things I want to say or put into a poem or put into kind of prose or something like that. I do try not to like end my day with any of it like swirling around in my body, hoping I'll remember it tomorrow. And so that's kind of my only check place of, did I get enough done today? I definitely have resisted at first I was like trying to like, I think like most of us are like, okay, it's pandemic. So we should do like, this is all my new programming for pandemic. It's going to be that like on Mondays, I'm going to do this and I should go live on this day and I should do da 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 da. And you're like, and then all of a sudden I was like, what? Like, I am none of these things. Like, I literally am someone who like, I sit alone for most of the day. Like, I'm not, like that is not, I don't actually like have enough in my tank to live that life without the pandemic. So, in the sense of like with the one to just be thinking that I should be in like a overdrive. And so I resisted overdrive. I've resisted thinking that like the writing should feel or should flow the way it does in times that aren't this. And so, I think that if you are looking for your writing process, one of the best books I ever read, for just kind of making sure you're dedicating yourself to your craft or practice is The War of Art. I read it probably 10 years ago, but it really like fundamentally changed that like you do just need to sit down and like have the pen and paper and whether you write nothing. And I have much more playtime writing during pandemic than I have any writing with a deadline. And for me, I wanted to feel joyful and I wanted to feel fun. Or I wanted to feel like something where I'm like, kind of organizing thoughts on something else. And it just feels good to get that off of my chest so I don't have to go to bed with it. But yeah, my writing process has been kind of like self-care where it's like, it's just different every day. Like, sometimes you like need to get in the bathtub in the middle of the day and like, who's to say you shouldn't? Like sometimes it feels better to keep on the pajamas all day. And sometimes you're like, girl, you have to get the fuck out of those pajamas, sometimes it's a walk. Sometimes it's, doing like a random dance workout class. Like, I think that kind of really, and that's why I said in the beginning, it's like, this is an amazing time to get to know yourself and just check in every day and be like, ooh, what's going to feel good today? Like, in actually just having the space to do that, right? So it's like when you sit down and have your morning coffee, like have a little notepad with you where you sit down and are like, okay, today, like, how do I want to feel today? Like, yesterday I felt sluggish. So today I want to feel like I was able to like move the muscles on my body. Like I want to feel active today. Like, okay, today, like yesterday I felt a little like shitty because I didn't get any writing done. So today, like, I want to know that like I at least sat in a room and didn't have anything else I was supposed to do for an hour, but write. And whether the writing comes or not, I'll at least know that I was devoted. Like, okay, like I didn't get to see my daughter as much. So I want to make sure I end the day and do bath time. Like, and I think that when you actually like take this pandemic one day at a time and take self-care one day at a time and are willing to change it and move it and allow all the things to serve you, like, we get through it and we end up feeling as okay as we could possibly feel.
Yeah, I love that. And then I think the one thing for me for my writing process is that like I'm working on my book and I'm just very much in the beginning of quarantine, I was just like, well, I have all day to write it because I'm like, don't have anywhere to be. So then I would like procrastinate or waste time and blah, blah, blah. And so then like at the end of the day, like I would get nothing done and be like, but I had the whole day. What did I do? And so I downloaded this app called Pomodoro, which has really helped me sort of structure my writing sessions where it's like you write for 25 minutes, then you take like a 5-minute break, write for 25 minutes. And that really sort of helped me because what ended up happening with me is if I felt like I got quote unquote behind on my writing, then I'd be like, okay, I'm going to sit down now for 5 hours straight and just only focus on writing. And it's like your brain's going to get tired. Your brain is not designed for hyper focus of 5 hours. And so I just took the pressure off and just had like a structure of like shorter writing sessions. And then I have gotten so much more done because I'm allowing myself to take a break and not feel guilty about it.
And you can structure it in ways that work for you, right? So you can be like, my entire day is shut down and I don't communicate with anyone like the first 2 hours after I have my coffee. Because like the most kind of like pumped I could feel the whole day is like right after that tea or that coffee. And I think that one of the greater hacks for writing is to turn your Wi-Fi off of your computer.
Mm-hmm.
And so I actually and make sure that like your iMessages aren't popping up and all of that. And if you can look up the word, you can look it up later, and like that you can't get like sucked into like Google search land, which I think happens with a lot of us. So I definitely always turn the Wi-Fi off. And then sometimes you can just like, I'll have like writing dates with myself where I'll come into my little writing room at night, and instead of like hanging with Simon right after dinner, I'll like come in, I'll have a glass of wine, I'll write or I'll paint or I'll draw, and I'll just be like, like I just want to like, just have that reminder that like it's fun and it feels good. And that like it's a part of who I am, so I can never really lose it. And so I do think that I definitely recommend trying to do like writing dates like once a week or once every other week.
That's cute. Oh, I like that. I'm going to try that too. So I hope that helped you, Valerie. And Cleo, this has been so great and wonderful. And I'm so glad that you could do this. Thank you so much. You're just so fantastic. And I'm truly only trying Journaling again because of you, because I really do think that third time's a charm. I'm going to break through and I'm really going to fall in love with journaling. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy I got to be here.
Okay, Bake Off. That was great.
Wasn't that just like a warm cup of cocoa?
It was.
It was lovely. I felt very like cozy and like a...
Yeah, it was a warm cup of cocoa. That was so cute. Cleo, thank you so much for taking the time. And as always, you guys, go ahead and get that journal. We got to start putting our feelings down on paper, getting them out so we can be freer and lighter. I mean, I feel like if all the conversations are going to be like this in December, we are closing out this year well.
Yes, for sure.
So I guess, since I have nothing else to say.
Wow, first time ever.
Credits?
Host?
Me? Phoebe Lynn Robinson.
Producers?
I think it's still me, Phoebe Lynn Robinson. And also you, British Bake Off.
Editors?
Well, it's just one. It's you, British Bake Off.
Oh. Theme song?
Gavin Turek.
Interns?
Sasha and Malia Obama. And ladies, I don't want to have to do this publicly because this is kind of awkward, but like the semester is starting to come to a close. So I think next year I might have to have different interns.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, you put in such great work this fall.
You did an average job.
So, I mean, we'll Bake Off and I will talk. We'll see what we can do if we can extend it another semester, but...
It's not looking good.
Yeah. But you know what? Thank you for going on those coffee runs for us.
Thanks for plugging in them cables.
Yeah. I mean, thanks for, making sure I wore my zip patch.
The night before.
Yeah. You guys are smart.
Bye.
Bye.